This demo model is based on a UK-based NGO with offices in Malawi and South Africa. Their donations and other non-grant income are sourced in the UK in sterling, and they receive grants from two sources. As you'll see, they set their income as well as income, project and office allocations centrally. Once this is closed, head office cost budgets can be set, and finally the field office cost budgets are unlocked. I have two users: finance, responsible for income budgeting, head office cost budgeting and managerial approval of all offices, and a budget holder user who has budget holder responsibilities for the Malawi offices, and as you can see, does not have access to administrative functions or income budgeting. All of these processes, as well as the look and feel of the model, are fully customizable to your requirements. Additionally, this demo model has detailed allocations that may be more than you need, and these can be removed very easily. Now, the best way of thinking of this budgeting model is from right to left. We set assumptions, import or key in exchange rates, and set a number of other parameters which control the process. We then complete income budgeting, followed by cost budgeting, which enable us to automatically generate our financial statements. We first set our assumptions, which can be global, that is, applying to the whole organisation, or country specific. In production, you could have more specific assumptions, such as project level. These are used in calculations and reports. Two things before we move on from this screen. In this report, and in every report, you'll see PDF and Excel icons, allowing easy export of whatever it is that you're currently viewing. You'll also see many of these drop-downs, in this case by year or by version. These allow you to slice the data, viewing the assumptions for another year, for example. The version drop-down in particular enables you to access different budget phases, forecasts, and what-if scenarios, enabling you to take a copy of, say, the budget, tweak some assumptions, perhaps optimistically, and see the end results in your financial statements. We'll talk a little bit about this later. Exchange rates hold average and closing rates, in this case against sterling. These can be flexed by version or imported directly. Now, the administration menu contains a number of tasks. Version copy enables you to easily add a new version and copy an existing version into it for creating new scenarios. Add element enables you to add new items to any structure, such as projects, grants, or offices. In this case, I want to add a new project into our education program. In production, of course, these are likely imported, but manual addition is still useful when planning for a project that may not yet exist in your source systems. And delete element allows their removal if no longer required. Income source attributes stores key information about grant and non-grant income sources. Friendly names for users can be shown rather than internal codes. Sources marked as grants or not, and individual items included or excluded from budgeting and reporting. In this case, once a grant is finished, it still needs to be in the system for historical reporting, but users shouldn't see it most of the time. Each income source is also made in a currency, which we tag from the screen. Office attributes are similar, but with the addition of budget holder and managerial responsibilities, which determine which users have responsibility for various phases of the budgeting process. Project attributes determine whether they appear in the system to users. As with grants, finished projects can be kept in the system, but hidden from view. Finally, I'll switch to our budget holder user. As we saw, we don't have access to all of those maintenance tasks, nor to income budgeting. If I click into cost budgeting, we can see the two offices that this user has responsibility for, but the system tells us that we can't do these until income budgeting is completed and the head office cost budget is completed too. So we should probably do those. If I change back to our finance user and head into income budgeting, here we see all of the steps that we go through in this process. As mentioned earlier, you don't have to enable all of these steps for your organisation. You will see throughout that there's already data in this budget. This is for demo purposes, and zero-based budgeting is available if you require. We start with non-grant unrestricted income, that is, own supporter income. We actually have two other non-grant income sources, schools and raffles, which have been hidden from budgeting in the maintenance screens. In this model, we can key in data to any of these months and accounts, but data can easily be imported from a system such as Razor's Edge. Note the currency drop down here. You'll see these all the way through the process. In this case, you can only key data into local currency, here that is sterling, but you can view the amounts in other currencies such as euros, just not change that data. Next is our grant income. Information on donors and grants can be imported directly or added in maintenance and assigned a currency. For each, we put in our amount, what percentage is restricted, and of course by extension how much is unrestricted, choose a start month, and give it a duration. For the demo, I've set all of these to very short periods so you can see them starting and ending on the next screen. But the system supports multi-year grants and projects. Finally, we choose a dispersal plan. In the model we have 3 monthly or one of 2 quarterly profiles. This report enables us to see the grant and non-grant income information brought together. In the lower half we have our non-grant sources, and above we can see these grants being dispersed monthly or in one of the quarterly profiles. Currently we're looking at local currency, showing each individual source's currency, but we can change this to whatever we like. Here again, everything in euros. We now need to allocate this income to our projects. As with donors and grants, projects can be imported or manually added. In this screen, each income source is shown together with its income profile for the year, as chosen from this drop-down. Projects marked as budgetable in maintenance are listed, along with non-project for overheads. For each month, we can change the percentage of that income source that goes to any project. As we do, we see that the totals down the bottom are checking the allocations are complete, as is a flag at the top. If you wish to change all months, you can simply key that in here. As a note, if you'd rather allocate currency amounts rather than percentages as here, that can be achieved easily too. As you go through this process, totals at the end show us the allocation in currency of restricted and unrestricted income to that project. For this demo, we've simply keyed in numbers. In practice, of course, a lot of your unrestricted income will go to non-project overheads, but this process means you can allocate unrestricted income to projects if, for example, the donor requires you to match their funding or to make up for overspend. As before, we can shift currencies, useful for example if you knew that EC Grant 1 was mostly for Cape Town, so we'd rather see those allocations in Rand. You can also click on a grant or a project to see more information about them. Here just placeholder text, but it's a useful way to provide information to your users. As you can see, these allocations are very flexible, and this kind of screen allows you to allocate one grant to many projects or many grants to one project if required. Looking at this report now, we can view the income assigned to each project and drill into its detail. For example, if I open up my list of projects, right down to project 1 in our education program, then open up first of all my income sources to see my grant and non-grant split, and then a donor split, and finally the different EC grants, and my unrestricted and restricted split on EC Grant 1. And anywhere through here, I can view the trends. Or I can reset my drill down and start again, or view the trends at a higher level. You've already seen a few ways of presenting data. You may of course prefer a more traditional tabular report here, and the choice of format is always yours. Projects now have an envelope of income to spend in the budget. If you wish to budget purely by project, or if all of your projects are contained within one office, we could stop the process here. In our demo, however, we need to allocate projects to offices to give us our office envelope of income. This screen works in the same way as the income allocation screen, with a couple of differences. Local currency is very useful here, because we see what the allocations of project income will be in each office's individual currency. Most offices will need to allocate the non-project or overhead funds, but the rest of the allocation process and how detailed it goes will of course vary depending on your organisation. We'll leave these as they are for now. Finally, that generates another drillable report which shows us all the detail that is held about our income. So Lilongwe and Malawi may mostly be concerned with their totals. But importantly, if we were to go down to Project 1, Grants, and the EC, the system is always tracking this all the way back to the income and funding source. This is of course critical for donor reporting later on. Now we feel ready to close our income budget and open costs, so we simply click on here to open our costs budget. Here we can see the system telling us that cost budgeting is open, as we've closed off income, but also that head office has to be completed first. This is so we know the allocations of head office costs to the other offices. As with everything you're seeing today, the process and the restrictions used are just a choice we've made, and the system can be customized to your workflow. So let's start off with head office payroll. Here we have a mix of existing employees imported from our payroll system and any new employees that we may be adding in the budget. We'll focus on the new employees here. For each, you specify the number of FTE, which enables you to deal with both part-time workers or to set a group of employees rather than one by one. We can store information such as employee number or name, and we choose a start period and an end period if known, perhaps if we hire a contractor. In this model we key in a salary, but we can set this screen up for waged employees and a multitude of additional aspects such as overtime where required. We also give our employee a type, which are entirely customizable to your requirements, and these can be used in reporting. Finally, we can add in commentary. Here it's for all payroll, but if you would like comments for every individual staff member, you absolutely can. And that is all you need to provide. The model will provide the rest. To see this, if we click on View Payroll Phased, we're provided with a simple report to show how, based on that simple entered data, the model has phased out the salaries based on start and end dates and calculated employer national insurance and headcount figures. Any other calculations required for specific country payroll can be added in easily. You'll notice when we look at the Malawi field office, I've also put them in with employer national insurance. That's simply because of a lack of knowledge of Malawian payroll law. And the next step for most offices is to allocate payroll to projects. In this model, we've assumed, however, that head office staff work on non-project items. So here we move on to our cost budget. Here is where, for any year or moving forward, and the various projects that may be allocated to this office, we enter our remaining costs. This office's income for the year and the staff expenditure currently allocated to the project are shown for reference, and the figures are of course displayed in that office's currency. As with allocations, we can set individual figures for each month or key in a figure for all months and add commentary to any lines, as well as expanding and contracting these rows. We can also view charts of any of these accounts that we wish to see how it trends over the year. The head office is special because its expenditure can be spread across the field offices. To do this, we click into Allocate Overheads to Offices, which will display the total expenditure on overheads for head office and allows us to apportion percentages to the various offices, and we can view those amounts in whatever currency we wish. Here, our Cape Town office is much larger than our two Malawi offices, so it's going to shoulder more of the overheads. We could go through and key in a lot of numbers, but for the demo, we now feel that we've completed our head office budget. And in our budget overview, we'll see two flags, one for whether the office has spent more than their envelope of income, and another for whether they've allocated enough to meet their head office overhead allocation. These are of course most relevant for field offices. So we click Submit, and head office will jump straight from phase 1 to finalised. Now I can click into Lilongwe's employees, for example, but finance doesn't have responsibility for phase 1, so these figures are all locked. To access those offices, we'll need to change to our budget holder user who does have responsibility for phase 1. And now everything is green. Cost budgeting is open, head office is complete, and all the other offices are open. So we're now ready to budget for the two Malawi offices. Starting with Lilongwe's payroll budget, it works in exactly the same way as head office, so we'll leave it as it is. But of course, each office automatically budgets in its own currency, in this case, Kwacha. With the field offices, we can then allocate staff to projects, allowing us to apply funds to salaries based on where the work is done. The screen works in exactly the same manner as other allocations we've seen, so we'll leave it as it is. But once you've done all of these allocations, viewed the totals, and you're happy with how the cost has been apportioned, this View Phased report is very useful, which enables us to view how those allocations come out by program or individual projects and highlighting any areas of overspend. The final step, as before, is cost budget. This screen is the same as that of head office. We can add commentary line by line, we can expand and contract rows, we can set individual months or set the whole year at a stroke. The main difference is that down below we're shown our allocated share of the overheads in local currency and how much we have currently allocated across our various projects. You can see here that share of overheads is a cost line here, and we can apply amounts here across non-project and project income to meet the total. What you'll also notice is that Lilongwe does not have any Project 3, because when we were allocating projects to offices, we didn't allocate it to Lilongwe at all. We now feel that we've completed Lilongwe's budget, so we return to our budget menu, and we see that our flags for overspend and meeting allocations are okay, so we click Submit. Your organisation may also want to go further and allocate those specific cost lines to each grant. In this demo, we've automated this based around the initial income allocations. If I was to go into all of our income sources down to EC grants, you can see how that's been split automatically. But if you wish to do this manually, this can be an additional process without any problems. Here we see that Lilongwe has moved back to phase 2, ready for managerial approval before being finalised to the budget. We can go back into Lilongwe, but we can't change any of these numbers unless our manager moves the process back a phase. Switching back to finance, in our cost budget, finance can now go into Lilongwe's budget areas and can review Lilongwe's costs, change whatever the budget holder submitted before submitting that office to the budget. In this case, we'll assume that the budget holder got everything right and submit it finally to the budget. Now, we'll leave budgeting there rather than going through all of the offices, but hopefully that's given you a flavour for the more controlled and secure way that we can help you do your budgets. Last of all, we have our financial statements. Now, these bring together all of the data we've put in so far and automatically generate those reports month after month. Starting with our I&E, we can see all of the income and expenditure of the budget for the overall organisation, or we can slice this to show different years to view the longer term, any version, and that includes the individual budget phases, different currencies, so let's flip it back to pounds for the time being, income sources, right down to individual grants, restricted or unrestricted income, projects, programs and their individual projects, as well as country totals and individual offices. Much of the power of this system comes from the fact that each unit of currency is always tracked and always associated to one of these. So at any time, you have a full picture of the spend from, say, an individual grant. We can view trends, in this case of income, spark lines, we can drill down on any of these individual rows, and we can view KPIs, in this case donor dependency and income utilization. Our assumptions come into play here. In this case, our payroll vacancy assumption has been applied over the year to reduce our staff costs accordingly. The share of overheads have also all been balanced out with rules, so I&E is an accurate view for the entire organisation or for individual offices. It's worth noting, as before, the versions here include various budget phases. So Lilongwe's budget holder could view the I&E for phase 1 as they key in their numbers to see the overall picture. Full security means that individual users will only see the items in these drop-downs that are relevant to them. But centrally, we only have to create this report once. The income and expenditure in turn, of course, feeds the cash flow, where we can add rules and calculations around payment timings, as well as the balance sheet, which can be configured in the same way. In this demo here, it's simply tracking cash. Now, the final report here is a very powerful one for comparing and contrasting different areas of the organisation. So down our side, we have our full income and expenditure lines, which we can expand and contract. We have two sets of numbers, and for each of which we can choose a year, a version, and all of the other drop-downs as in the full income and expenditure. What this allows us to do is compare versions, such as comparing budget phase 1 to what is currently an empty scenario, or we can keep the version the same or set the right-hand side to an individual project, or in this case, since we've just been budgeting for them, we'll choose Lilongwe. To see an office or a project's share of income and expenditure is very helpful. Here we see that Lilongwe has 14% of our income, but 21% of our staff costs. What you do with that information is of course up to you, but this report is a great example of how we can expose useful information to make the right decisions. That brings us to the end of the demo. Hopefully it's given you a flavour for the benefits that the system can bring, removing the problems of spreadsheets, adding user friendliness for end users, robustness and control, and making your data easily accessible for analysis and decision making. Thanks very much for your time today. If you have any further questions or would like to see some more detail, please don't hesitate to get in touch.